So Curt Cignetti sounded off Josh last week. I asked him about the Virginia series at Big Ten Media Days and canceling that, and I railed against it here on the show. And all of a sudden, he was talking about the SEC, and I thought, wait, have we gone 5 years into the future with the Wayback Machine, but in the other direction? And Virginia's in the SEC. How did we get here? It came off a little strange to me, frankly, that he suddenly turned that around and said, yeah, the SEC, I just wanted to adopt an SEC scheduling philosophy. And I was like, well, I don't know that you did that. I'm critical of the way the SEC sets up some of their scheduling parameters, but that wasn't what I was actually asking about. How did what he said last week in Vegas land to you?
There were a bunch of dumb points made last week. There have been a bunch of dumb points made at SEC Media Days, at Big Ten Media Days, ACC. Rhett Lashley made some dumb points. A lot of these guys I love, by the way. Like, I love a lot of these dudes. I got personal relationships with a lot of them. But that doesn't absolve you from saying dumb stuff. And it's the kind of thing that you say around a 4-year-old because the 4-year-old doesn't know any better. So if you have a full-grown adult sitting in front of you, you can't tell the full-grown adult, you better go to sleep, because there's a monster out here and he comes out after 10 p.m., so you better get in bed because the adult just thinks you're high. But if you tell that to a 4-year-old, that'll motivate. Now, you lied to him. I don't advise this, but that 4-year-old will run in there and get in bed. I almost feel like I was talked to that way by Cignetti, by Rhett Lashley, by conference commissioners. The SEC handed out an entire Jonestown-esque propaganda packet down in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. So just tell the truth. Just if Curt Cignetti would walk up to his podium and say, yeah, we gutted our schedule. I mean, we completely went down to the studs and we eased it up as much as we can because we think we can game the system that way. I'd be pissed, but not at him. I'd be pissed at the system that allows that to exist and the entire concept that a win is a win, which is a lie in college football, and the entire concept that you are what your record says you are, which is a bigger lie in college football. But he didn't write the rules. He's just taking advantage of them. He's doing nothing more than Dan Lanning did when he put 12 on the field intentionally last fall. He did it because the rules allowed him to do it, and he found a loophole. Well, what did they do with Lanning? They didn't do anything with him, but they closed the loophole. So similarly, until the loopholes are closed in the selection criteria, in the schedule grading and strength of schedule process, then he's free to do what he wants to do. In fact, they're free to do what they want to do no matter what. But don't try and what about your way out of it? Don't try and deflect like everyone's an idiot in the room. Everyone knows what you're doing. Everyone knows why you're doing it. To take matters further, everyone knows to a large degree why you had access to the playoff last year. And I'm not one who thinks they didn't deserve it. I think Indiana should have been in. But I think most of us know had I handed them Florida's schedule, they wouldn't have been in. So we all get what's going on right now. No one's asking you to apologize for your plight in the world, but we are asking you not to treat us like idiots and not just assume that your audience is a bunch of clapping seals, because that's not the case either.
Yeah, I look at that situation and kind of compare it to how I feel about the LA Dodgers in baseball. I don't care for the Dodgers being able to exist in the way that they do, deferring all of Ohtani's money, paying all of these guys, no salary cap. It's not good for the sport. But my frustration doesn't actually come with the Dodgers as much as it does with Major League Baseball for allowing this to happen, for operating a league that exists for a team. Because if it were my team in that position, I would want them to do all of that. Of course I would. Because if you're not cheating and you can go out there and give yourself an advantage over the rest of the league, of course you want to do that. And amazingly, I don't know if I found Cignetti's comment more objectionable. I probably didn't. Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, going out there and discussing the possibility, and I think you and I are going to be in 100% agreement on this, saying an 8-4 team should be in the playoff in any conference repulses me to my core. That just tears away at what has made college football so great for such a long time. And him saying, like, we were talking about 9-3 teams last year in the SEC. I'm so happy they didn't get in, because that means we are hanging on to, you know what, Vanderbilt beat Alabama, and it did matter at least a little, even if it doesn't mean as much as it used to, and they were still able to get close. And Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, and they were punished for that, and that was the one game that decided things. Now, of course, the urgency isn't the same, but Petitti saying 8-4 in other sports should be in the play. That's nails on a chalkboard to me.
So they're horrible at messaging. The Big Ten's just horrible at
Really
messaging.
bad.
And we've tried to give them an opportunity. I'll request someone once to be on the show. I'm not doing it twice. So, I mean, we reached out to the league office. I would have loved to have had Tony on the show. Unbeknownst to him, he's got a pretty friendly person in me when it comes to some of the general ideas he has about the playoff. But they horrifically fumbled the messaging of it. So if you're pitching your concepts, you pitch the merits of the concept. And if you have to do it comparatively, like if I'm arguing the AQ format versus the at-large format, I'm arguing the merits and benefits of the AQ format versus the potential downsides of the at-large. I'm not going up there and voluntarily tossing out hypotheticals. 8-4 team. No one's gone 8-4. The season hypothetically hasn't even played out yet. You don't have to do that. It's just taking a crowbar to your own shins. And I talked to a number of people last week who were at Big Ten Media Days. I'm talking about national types, big names in the space. And one after the other, they sort of echoed the same sentiments. Like, we can't get Tony. We can't get Tony. And so I'm thinking to myself, it's not that he owes anyone interviews. That's not what it's about. But I just came from Atlanta. I just came from a part of the country where, I kid you not, I watched Greg Sankey do an interview on Wetumpka, Alabama radio and fully espoused the message and the beliefs of the SEC way of doing things and whatever their philosophy is on scheduling and whatever their philosophy is on the playoff. So everybody's in lockstep down there, at least with understanding what he thinks. The messaging is just, it's old hat for him. And he's a pretty wise dude. Now, I happen to not agree with Greg Sankey on what he thinks would be the best model for the playoff, but he does a heck of a lot better job at explaining it than Tony Petitti does. And the SEC does a heck of a lot better job of laying their truth out than the Big Ten does. So the Big Ten's been a train wreck in messaging this, and it squarely falls on their shoulders. And that's almost independent of whether you agree or disagree with what their ideas are. They suck at delivering the ideas.
My scheduling fix looks like this. Every single Power 4 team, if you don't go to the AFC NFC model, has one FCS game. I'm okay with that. I do play-by-play for an FCS school. I fully understand and appreciate how important those games are. And once every 8 years or so, an FCS team wins an FBS game. It's a big deal for that program. I'm good with that. One group of 5 and one Power 4. And how you schedule the Power 4, I think, should be a 2-year rotating window based on the conference standings, and you set up kind of a college basketball style conference challenge, ACC against Big 12, Big 10 SEC. Those two teams based on conference standings rotate for 2 years with a home and home, and then you switch conferences and you rotate around. If you could set up college football scheduling within the current framework of the sport to make it better for all involved, how would you do it?
I would explore a version of scheduling like that. I almost thought about this the other day. So there's no controversy-free way of measuring resumes at the end of the year when you have such vast disparity in strength of schedule, not just conference to conference, but I mean, if you looked at Missouri's schedule versus Oklahoma's this year, they're in the same conference, like they're in the same league, and there's no comparison. So I almost thought about doing like a point system. And if I were a committee member, this is how I would do it. Like, this is how I wouldn't even announce it. I don't need it to be adopted as the like law of the land, but I would internally, I would go to the best data person I know. And I would say, develop me a merit-based point system instead of me looking at how many top 25 wins you have, which is an absurdly stupid metric. So that's what I would do. And I would look at it personally, and I would try and sort of beta test it for a few years and see if it's true. And then I would debut that to the world. And I'd let you know what the criteria are beforehand. You're going to get this many points per this caliber win. Now, look, power raters, bookmakers, they have long since adopted this philosophy to set lines, to set power ratings and whatnot. But to apply it to a merit-based selection process at the end of the year, I think would make sense, because what I'm doing is I'm giving you the end of the story. from that, you can backfill the way that you do scheduling. I am all for, like, I know there's a philosophy out there that thinks the league office ought to take it out of the university's hands and they ought to set the scheduling. If you wanted to go that route, I'd be okay with that. I don't think it's realistic that we go that route. So if we don't go that route, I'm fine leaving it in your hands. But you know what? If you're going to go the route of scheduling the FCS team and not elsewhere loading up your schedule, then you better beat everybody by 50, or you're not going to have as high a point total at the end of the year. And you better get comfortable with the fact that there are going to be some 9-3s out there that trump some 10-2s out there. There may be a 9-3 that trumps an 11-1 out there, because this is college sports. It's not pro sports. So I would just love for the parameters to be more identified. That's always been my beef, a lot more so than what the schedules are. Although I do agree, I would love to see every schedule as robust as possible.